So there's an old Pitchfork article about George Harrison called Notes You Never Hear. In it, author Jason Green talks about the peculiar characteristics of Harrison's lead guitar work across the Beatles' catalogue. For example, if you've heard the meek, underpowered guitar solo in the middle of Something off Abbey Road, you know exactly what Green is talking about. Something solo is beautiful melodically speaking, but the guitar sounds strange, almost even wrong, and I think that's way more interesting. It's almost as if Harrison is only tentatively playing the notes. The solo is beautiful and pretty to be sure, but it's bashful and shy and fleeting, and it almost makes you wonder as if the producer left a cut in by mistake. Harrison's guitar playing is just as much about the texture, the feeling, as it is about the melody. If that solo is a man declaring his love musically, which I believe it is, Harrison is doing so shyly with both his hands in his pockets. It's not a loud proclamation of love. And you see that across Harrison's guitar playing, and it's the kind of mystery and loneliness that Jason Green was talking about in his Pitchfork article. In this context, I call it sound feel. Like mouthfeel, but musical. What's all this got to do with Josh Homme? Lots of things potentially, but one thing in particular. I've always loved Josh's music, and that of Queens of the Stone Age, to say nothing of his other projects. And one of the reasons I love Homme's work is because of the way he uses texture and rhythm. He deploys these elements to create compositions that are primal, vulgar, odd, sinister, and at times even romantic. He uses them to elevate, distort, and even defy the conventions of rock music. And he does it not just through composition and instrumentation, but through production. So Josh Homme is a lot like George Harrison. They're both masters and students of sound feel. They're both about scrappiness, authenticity, and kitsch. It's really interesting to see this when you see Josh Homme play George Harrison's guitars, and their playing styles are quite similar. Josh Homme has actually said before that he finds it interesting to play guitar solos that sound like they're mocking guitar solos, which in turn leads to more interesting melodic compositions, but that's beside the point. You know a Harrison note or riff or lick when you hear it, and the same is true of Homme. You know them both, arguably, by their wrongness. In this video, we'll examine how Josh Homme uses texture and rhythm, two elements of sound feel, to create compositions that are unique and interesting. To talk about texture, I'll start by putting Homme's music in the appropriate context. I won't bore you with the history of the guy's life or entire body of work, except to say that he's helmed no fewer than 18 musical projects across no fewer than 4 groups. The genres and styles of these groups differ slightly, but they all have Homme's creative parentage, and so they all have similar feelings. It's the reason people listen to The Evil Has Landed and intuit parallels between its last section and the kind of driving pulse you hear in Wanna Be in LA by Eagles of Death Metal. Are the songs that similar musically? Sort of, but their textural DNA is what makes them seem the most alike. More on this later. Homme is often lumped together with mainstream contemporaries of noughties era rock music, your Foo Fighters, Soundgarden, Muse, Rage, Nine Inch Nails and so on. Homme has made music with members from some of these bands, and Dave Grohl is a prime example. But unlike Grohl and his Fooies, Homme has never taken Queens beyond its status as a cult darling. Famous as the band is, you really can't say Queens is a household name in rock music. There's nothing good or bad about this, mind you. It's probably just a consequence of Homme's pursuit of sonic wrongness. In other words, he's an acquired taste. So Homme's got his Rat Pack, but he's still the odd one out. Foo Fighters is known for its huge, gunning, arena-friendly riffs and soaring ballads. The production of Foo Fighters songs can be best described as clean, straightforward, maybe even clinical. I love the Fooies, to be clear, and there's nothing wrong with this approach. I'm simply saying that the way the songs are recorded and presented does not contribute anything in and of itself. The Fooies don't use production as a creative tool, only a logistical one. Grohl himself talks about this in his new documentary on Sound City. He deifies the Neve mixing console. He explains how it provided a clean, warm, well-rounded sound feel to almost every rock record made in the last 40 years, from Fear's The Record to Rick Springfield's Working Class Dog. They all used it and loved it because of its fidelity. If I can pivot for a second, it's weird when you consider that Nirvana's Nevermind was recorded using the same techniques and production values as Fleetwood Mac's Rumours and a bunch of other records. Nevermind is the epitome of the grunge genre, and it's a classic record, but it's funny to me how ungrungy the sound is. Take Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's spotless and well-rounded. The guitars, though heavily distorted, sit evenly in the mix. There's no natural, fourth-wall-breaking distortion or gain blemishes. The drums have been recorded in such a way as to permit natural reverberation. And Grohl, who lives in the pocket, can't help but keep the song on tidy rhythmic rails. With the possible exception of Something in the Way, in which Kurt Cobain croons into a microphone as though inches away from your ear, most of the entire record is done in the classic Neve style. Why do I say all this? Homme tried the Neve style, and I don't think it worked for him. It stripped out the wrongness of his sound feel. To show you what I mean, I'll compare two Queens of the Stone Age songs. One recorded in the classic Neve style, and one recorded in the dirty Josh Homme style. So the first song, You Think I Ain't Worth a Dollar But I Feel Like a Millionaire, is taken from Queen's third studio album, Songs for the Deaf. This album was produced by Eric Valentine, incidentally, who also produced for Good Charlotte, Lost Prophets, Third Eye Blind, Smash Mouth, and the All American Rejects, among others, which kind of makes sense. Dave Grohl plays drums for this song too. Apparently, the drums for this album were recorded in a small, dead-sounding isolation booth to create a, quote, tight, focused, punchy, and kind of claustrophobic sound. The resulting sound feel is definitely Fooey-ish. It's powerful, and the song is certainly aggressive and bombastic, but it's also clean and neat in its presentation. Contrast it with the drum and guitar treatments in the second song, Sick Sick Sick, off Era Vulgaris. This album was produced by Chris Goss, who is credited as a key figure in the development of the desert rock sound. I can't say for sure how they did it, but it definitely sounds as though the drums were mixed evenly, using microphones placed close, as well as far from the sound source. So you get the punch of the toms and the massive beat of the kick, but you also hear the rattle of the snare in between, and you get some of the room noise too. I believe the same thing was done with the guitar tracks. Homme and Troy Van Leeuwen have an array of strange distortion pedals, and they employ them in the song, but the way they're mixed makes them sound a little flatter, as though the ballsy low-end frequencies have been toned down or bled out. This is my main point. Homme uses these techniques in Sick 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 to create a sound feel that elevates the song beyond the sum of its parts. The song just feels sick. The vocal tracks are distorted and pinched, the drums are abrasive, the amplifier tones are ugly. It just feels wrong. And it's awesome. With his use of sound feel, Homme pays tribute to something I think we all believe. Rock music ought to be contrarian and brazen in its very sonic DNA. Plenty of bands crank up the distortion, make huge layered mixes and sing about how macho they are. But do we really believe them when that's all we get? Here's another example, taken from No One Loves Me and Neither Do I, a song off the self-titled Them Crooked Vultures album. Listen to the way the instruments in the intro are layered and mixed. So you've got Grohl giving the song stability and structure with his power and precision, but again, the drums are mixed so as to allow the room noise in. Josh's guitars come in, slightly detuned, and he's using an ugly, sharp distortion. The guitar lines are brash, they're demanding, they kind of battle awkwardly with each other, and they're placed backward in the mix, almost sounding as if they're coming from another room. Then you've got John Paul Jones in his bass line. I didn't realise this until I saw Them Crooked Vultures live in 2009, but he's actually playing this part with a slide, a freaking slide. It's scratchy, slightly atonal, and frankly, it's not really doing the job of rhythm keeping that a bass is supposed to. Now, this is all intentional. All up, you get this weird, unsettling, dirty sound feel. It's not neat, it's not Nevey, and I think that's critical. I think the musical ideas explored in the song wouldn't work if the song had been recorded by the Foo Fighters in their style. It's so original, and I bloody love it. Homme has remained committed to his sound feel even through to Queen's upcoming record, In Times New Roman. Take this repeated post-chorus section from their latest release, Carnivore. The guitar here is so rude and caustic that it hurts your ears. It upsets the very act of passive listenership. Add the circular melodic line, and it almost sounds like a possessed calliope at a haunted carnival. Imagery which is very consistent with Queen's and its love for the macabre. I guess what this shows is that Homme doesn't care most about the empowerment and catharsis of a well-recorded, well-mixed rock song. There's no release. This isn't pour some sugar on me. What he cares about is interesting sounds and textures, and how they represent specific emotions, be those emotions good or bad. So we've covered texture, rhythm is next. Luckily, this one's easier to explain. Homme uses rhythm in lots of interesting ways, but none are more interesting than what I call the drunken stumble. You could make the argument that Homme's songwriting style delights in the sensation of leglessness, of confusion and disassociation. Queen songs, particularly those from later albums, feel like a fun night out that suddenly turned seedy and dangerous. You're stumbling through a club, swaying as you walk. Your head is pounding. Your stomach feels off. The people around you may seem friendly, but the drink has twisted their smiles and you suspect something's not right. Maybe they're all laughing at you. You're not sure because you're dipping in and out of lucidity. 1 minute, you're a stupid laughing mess. The next, you're savvy, alert, suspicious. Before you know it, you've left the sweltering club and are running full tilt down the street, ignoring the concerned cries of your mates behind you. Maybe you're headed for a kebab, or maybe for the toilet bowl. Maybe there are ghosts or ghouls in pursuit. You can't simply write a song about such a sensation, because that would be kind of lame, but you can impart the feeling through texture and rhythm, or, more specifically, by upsetting the rhythm. That's what Homme does in Smooth Sailing, for example, and it elevates what would otherwise have been a dull blues-based number with frankly dumb lyrics into something that feels lumbering and unwieldy. It's the drunken stumble. Here it is. It's a modulation in the rhythm that completely disrupts the song. You're going one way, fast, then whoops. Oh wait, no, we're okay again. Homme uses this technique across his entire body of work, and it never ceases to delight me. Functionally, it works like a drum fill, an interesting idea that resets the listener's palate and keeps them interested. But it's an idea with so many different and satisfying applications, especially when Homme uses both his drunken stumble and his textural wrongness at the same time. Hell, that last song from Them Crooked Vultures is one long drunken stumble. You get the idea. The electronic music producer Flume once said he really didn't like rock music because it always sounded the same. His point of view was that you only get one set of sounds from a guitar, and that the whole genre as a whole has explored the same ideas to death. I don't agree with him, but I do see his point. Mainstream rock music today is known for its textural homogeneity. When the Fooey released Medicine at Midnight in 2021, Pitchfork said this about it. A Foo Fighters record rolls out in the same way a Taco Bell rolls out a new menu item. It's pretty harsh. It's a nominal twist on the same 5 or so ingredients. The guys of the Foo Fighters continue to plough through albums with one thankless goal in mind: to keep the dying institution of rock alive. Maybe rock is dying, maybe not. But through the unique use of texture and rhythm, Josh Homme has created for himself an unmistakable and compelling sound. So, at the very worst, Queens is like the dicey tribute band we've hired for the funeral of mainstream rock, and I'm okay with that. I'm not saying his compositional style is perfect, and that it hasn't led to a few stinkers. Fairweather Friends and Fortress come to mind. I'm sure I'm going to get a bit of hate for that. But I think it's fair to say that he's one of the few auteur musicians thinking deeply about what rock ought to feel like. That's why I'm excited for Times New Roman.